Second Chronicles Chapter 7. When Solomon had ended his prayer, fire came down from heaven and consumed the burnt offerings and the sacrifices, and the glory of the Lord filled the house. But the priests would not enter the house of the Lord, for the glory of the Lord filled the house of the Lord. All the Israelites looked on while the fire came down, and the glory of the Lord was upon the house, and they fell down upon the pavement with their faces to the earth, and worshipped, praising the Lord, who is so good, whose love endures forever. The king and all of the people offered sacrifices before the Lord. King Solomon offered as sacrifice 22,000 oxen and 120,000 sheep. The end of the dedication. Thus the king and all the people dedicated the house of God. The priests were standing at their stations, as were the Levites, with the musical instruments of the Lord, which King David had made, to give thanks to the Lord, whose love endures forever. When David offered praise through them, the priests opposite them blew the trumpets, and all of Israel stood. Then Solomon consecrated the middle of the court facing the house of the Lord. He offered there the burnt offerings and the fat of the communion offerings, since the bronze altar which Solomon had made could not hold the burnt offering, the grain offering, and the fat. On the occasion, Solomon, and with him all of Israel, a great assembly from Lebo-Hamath to the Wadi of Egypt, celebrated the festival for 7 days. On the 8th day they held a solemn assembly, for they had celebrated the dedication of the altar for 7 days and the feast for 7 days. On the 23rd day of the 7th month he dismissed the people to their tents, rejoicing and glad of heart, because of all the blessings the Lord had given David to Solomon and to his people Israel. Solomon finished building the house of the Lord, the house of the king, and everything else he wanted to do in regard to the house of the Lord and his own house. God's promise to Solomon. The Lord appeared to Solomon during the night and said to him, I have heard your prayer, and I have chosen this place for my house of sacrifice. If I choose heaven, so that there is no rain, if I command the locusts to devour the land, if I send pestilence among my people, if then my people upon whom my name has been pronounced humble themselves and pray, and seek my face, and turn from their evil ways, I will hear them from heaven, and pardon their sins, and heal their land. Now therefore my eyes shall be open, and my ears attentive to the prayer of this place. Now I have chosen and consecrated this house, that my name may be there forever. My eyes and my heart shall be there always. As for you, if you walk before me, as David your father did, doing all that I have commanded you, and keeping my statutes and ordinances. Stop it. Stop. Riley, you're on video while I'm reading the Bible. You and Genesis are playing. You guys are so cute. Genesis, you being a cutie patootie? Are you guys being cutie patooties? Oh, you are. You trying to love one, baby. You are. Good girls. Okay, that's a little bit much though, Jen. Don't you think? Just a little, yeah, just a little, okay. All right, no nibbling on arms. All right, okay. Ready? Are you sure? Jen, are you ready? Okay. As for you, if you walk before me, as David your father did, doing all that I have commanded you, and keeping my statutes and ordinances, I will establish the throne of your kinship, as I covenanted with David your father, when I said, there shall never be wanting someone from your line as ruler in Israel. But if ever you turn away and forsake my commandments and statutes, which I set before you, and proceed to serve other gods, and bow down to them, I will uproot the people from the land I gave, and repudiate the house I have consecrated for my name. I will make it a proverb and a byword among all nations, and this house which is so exalted, every passerby shall be horrified and asked, why has the Lord done such things to this land and to this house? And the answer will come, because they abandoned the Lord, the God of their ancestors, who brought them out of the land of Egypt, and they embraced other gods, bowing down to them and serving them. That is why he has brought upon them all this evil. Second Chronicles Chapter 8. Public works. After the 20 years during which Solomon built the house of the Lord and his own house, he built up the cities which Hiram had given him, and settled Israelites there. Then Solomon went to Hamath of Zobah and conquered it. He built Tadmor in the wilderness, and all of the supply cities, which he built in Hamath. He built Upper Beth Horon and Lower Beth Horon, fortified cities with walls and gates and bars. Also Baalath, all the supply cities belonging to Solomon, and all the cities for the chariots, the cities for the horses, and whatever else Solomon desired to build in Jerusalem, in Lebanon, and in the entire land under his dominion. All the people who were left of the Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, who were not Israelites, those of their descendants who were left in the land and whom the Israelites had not destroyed, Solomon conscripted as forced laborers, as they are to this day. But Solomon made none of the Israelites forced laborers for his works, for they were his fighting force, commanders, adjutants, chariot officers, and cavalry. They were also King Solomon's 250 overseers who directed the people. Solomon's piety. Solomon brought the daughter of Pharaoh up from the city of David to the house which he had built for her, for he said, "No wife of mine shall dwell in the house of David, king of Israel, for the places where the ark of the Lord has come are holy." In those times Solomon sacrificed burnt offerings to the Lord upon the altar of the Lord, which he had built in front of the porch, as was required to be done day by day, according to the command of Moses, especially on the Sabbaths, at the new moons, and on the fixed festivals 3 times a year, and on the feast of the unleavened bread, the feast of weeks, and the feast of booths. And according to the ordinance of David his father, he appointed the various divisions of the priests for their service, and the Levites according to their functions of praise and attendance upon the priests, as the daily duty required. The gatekeepers by their divisions stood guard at each gate, since such was the command of David, the man of God. There was no deviation from the king's command in whatever related to the priests and Levites or the treasuries. All Solomon's work was carried out successfully from the day the foundation of the house of the Lord was laid until its completion. The house of the Lord was finished. The glories of the court. What are you doing?
Huh?
What are you doing?
This?
Why? Why don't you pay attention? Glories of the Lord. In those times Solomon went to Etzion, Geber, and to Elath on the seashore of the land of Edom. Hiram and his servants sent him ships, and his own servants, expert seamen. They went with Solomon's servants to Ophir and obtained there 450 talents of gold and brought it to King Solomon. Chapter 9. The Queen of Sheba. The Queen of Sheba, having heard a report of Solomon's fame, came to Jerusalem to test him with subtle questions, accompanied by a very numerous retinue and by camels bearing spices, a large amount of gold and precious stones. She came to Solomon and spoke to him about everything that she had on her mind. Solomon explained to her everything she asked about, and there was nothing so obscure that Solomon could not explain it to her. When the Queen of Sheba witnessed Solomon's great wisdom and house he had built, the food at his table, the seating of his ministers, the attendance and dress of his waiters, his cupbearers in their dress, and the burnt offerings he sacrificed in the house of the Lord, it took her breath away. "The report I heard in my country about the deeds in your wisdom is true," she told the king. "I did not believe the report until I came and saw with my own eyes that not even half of the great wisdom had been told me. You have surpassed the report I heard. Happy your servants, happy these ministers of yours, who stand before you always and listen to your wisdom. Blessed be the Lord your God, who is pleased to set you on his throne as king for the Lord your God in the love your God has for Israel, to establish them forever. He has made you king over them to carry out judgment and justice." Then he gave the king 120 gold talents, a very large quantity of spices and precious stones. Never again did anyone bring such an abundance of spices as the Queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. The servants of Hiram and to Solomon, who brought gold from Ophir, also brought cabinet wood and precious stones. With the cabinet wood the king made stairs for the house of the Lord and the house of the king, and harps and lyres for the chanters. The like of these had not been seen before in the land of Judah. King Solomon gave the Queen of Sheba everything she desired and asked for, more than she had brought to the king. Then she returned with her servants to her own country. The gold that came to Solomon in 1 year weighed 666 gold talents, in addition to what came from the tolls on travelers and what the merchants brought. All the kings of Arabia also, and the governors of the country, brought gold and silver to Solomon. King Solomon made 200 large shields of beaten gold. 600 shekels of gold went into each shield, and 300 bucklers of beaten gold. 300 shekels of gold went into each buckler. And the king put them in the house of the forest of Lebanon. The king made a large ivory throne and overlaid it with fine gold. The throne had 6 steps. A footstool of gold was fastened to the throne, and there was an arm on each side of the seat, with 2 lions standing next to the arms. She's got a lion in her arms. She's so cute. Look at, isn't she so cute? And 12 other lions standing there on the steps, 2 to a step. And 12 other lions standing there on the steps, 2 to a step. Nothing like this was made in any other kingdom. All of King Solomon's drinking vessels were gold, and all the utensils in the house of the forest of Lebanon were pure gold. There was no silver, for in Solomon's time silver was reckoned as nothing. For the king had ships that went to Tarshish with the servants of Hiram. Once every 3 years the fleet of Tarshish ships would come with a cargo of gold and silver, ivory, apes, and monkeys, Solomon's renown. Thus King Solomon surpassed all the kings of the earth in riches and wisdom. All the kings of the earth sought audience with Solomon to hear the wisdom God had put into his heart. They all brought their tribute, vessels of silver and gold, garments, weapons, spices, horses, and mules that was due each year. Solomon had 4,000 stalls for horses, chariots, and 12,000 horses. These he allocated among the chariot cities and to the king's service in Jerusalem. He was ruler over all of the kings from the river to the land of the Philistines and down to the border of Egypt. The king made silver as common in Jerusalem as stones and cedars, as numerous as the sycamores of the Shephelah. Solomon's horses were imported from Egypt and from all of the lands. The death of Solomon. The remainder of the acts of Solomon, first and last, are recorded in the acts of Nathan the prophet, in the prophecy of Ahijah the Shilonite, and in the visions of Iddo the seer concerning Jeroboam, son of Nebat. Solomon was king in Jerusalem over all of Israel for 40 years. How many times do I need to ask you? Do I literally need to tell you? I figured you would have figured it out by now. Can you act with some respect? And be calm. And listen. We got one more sentence left. All right. The remainder of the acts of Solomon, first and last, are recorded in the acts of Nathan the prophet, in the prophecy of Ahijah the Shilonite, and in the visions of Iddo the seer concerning Jeroboam, son of Nebat. Solomon was king in Jerusalem over all of Israel for 40 years. Solomon rested with his ancestors and was buried in the city of David his father, and Rehoboam his son succeeded him as king. 2. The post-Solomonic monarchy of Judah. Chapter 10 will be next. God bless you.